Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sabrina Sally, and today I have another story time for you guys. But this story time is going to be a little bit different than my other ones because I don't have a specific story to tell y'all, but more like, I don't know, a few like mini stories, or I'm trying to describe to y'all what it was like going to my cult like private school. So that's what this video is going to be about. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss an upload. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that when I went to private school, I was totally oblivious to the fact that it was like a cult in any way. But I did know that it was a very different experience than anything I'd ever experienced before. I just wasn't sure why. And I don't know, I imagine that's how people in cults feel too. But that's neither here nor there. It wasn't until a few years ago, I was tailgating in College Station, and I met this girl. She was like a friend of a friend she was from San Antonio, and I don't know if it's this way in other cities, but in San Antonio there's like this network of private schools and like the families, and because they play each other in sports, or they channel into the same like high schools, or go to each other's events, or whatever the case. So she went to private school in San Antonio, and I was like, oh yeah, me too. And I told her the school I went to, and she was like, oh, you went to that school? Like, I heard that school was like a cult. And when she said that, it clicked for me, wow, it was like a cult. But I guess that I didn't realize that at the time. But yeah, looking back, I can definitely see that. And since then, I've talked to other people who've been to private schools in San Antonio and who have said the same thing. And also, when I was researching some of the stuff that I'll get into later, there's one guy in particular who blogs about this school, and I don't know what his interest is, but online a bunch of people reference this school. Not just him, other people as well, who reference this school as being like a cult. And I think it's gotten better because the archdiocese and the archbishop and stuff have gotten involved, but it was definitely really fishy back then. So I've got notes here just so that I can make sure I touch on everything that I want to. So when I started going to this school, I was in 5th grade, and it was a really small school at the time. It was pre-K through 8th grade, and there was one class per grade level, and by class I mean 15 to 25 students. So it was a really small school. That means there were 15 to 25 kindergartners, first graders, each grade, with the exception of pre-K. And most private schools, or most Catholic schools I should say, go to mass every Friday. This Catholic school, it was Roman Catholic, so that's a really strict, devout type of Catholic, and we went to mass every single day, Monday through Friday. Second period, that was our second period, was mass, and on Fridays we had mass in Latin, and we were expected to participate in mass. We basically had to memorize and understand this Latin mass every Friday. But we went to confession once a month, and I remember one time I asked, and I don't know who I asked, but I asked someone, one of my teachers, what happens if we miss confession, like if we're absent that day and then we die, because they used to say if you don't go to confession, you're gonna go to hell. So I was like, so if we miss it, or what if we go to confession and then we sin and then we die before going to confession again? And they told me that we're gonna go to hell. Like, that was something that I was told. So that just gives you an idea of what the school is like. But so our priest, this is like super weird, but our priest was actually married. And if you know anything about Catholicism, like priests take like a vow of abstinence or something like that. Like, they are not allowed to be married, they're not allowed to have sex, they're not allowed, certainly not allowed to have children. Well, our priest lived with his wife and had, I think, 2 or 3 children, adult children, but it was our priest used to be Episcopalian, and I guess in the Episcopalian church you're allowed to be, I don't know if they're priests or what he was there, but he was like involved in that church, and he was married, and then he converted to Catholicism after he'd been married and after his children were like grown and or maybe growing up. He had to get special permission from the Pope just to become a priest in the Catholic Church. So he got that permission, but he continued to live with his wife, which I guess the Catholic Church doesn't believe in divorce, so I don't know what they worked out, but he was living with his wife, and she was involved in the school, and even one if not both of their children, adult children, was also like involved, whether they were working or volunteering, something like that, for the school. So that was like a really unique situation. I mean, that's just unheard of in the Catholic Church. Like, I can almost guarantee that you will never hear of that besides at that school. The deacon, he was like our priest's best friend, but he was like really mean, and like, I don't know, he had this reputation though for being gay. Now, his sexual orientation, as far as I'm concerned, is neither here nor there, but the reason that he had this reputation is because of his behavior with like the guy students, like the boy students. I don't remember anything inappropriate happening, but I do remember that he had that reputation. He played favorites, definitely, with the boys, some of the boys, but it was more a rumor. It was a rumor more than anything. However, it did come out like after I was out of high school, I think, or maybe it came out when I was in high school. I didn't find out about it until recently, but it came out that this deacon, he had like sexual assault claims against him, like from children. So the allegations took place like in the early 90s. So that was before he was at our school, or I think he was like with our parish, but the school wasn't around. And then they didn't come to light until after I had left the school anyway. I think he was still working there, maybe not, but after like so many started coming out and were like found to be true, he retired, and then earlier this year he died. So that's where I was saying, like, I was doing research and found a lot of reference to this school as being cult-like. So when I was in 5th grade, our principal, they weren't called principals, he wasn't called a principal, he was called our headmaster. But his name, I wish I could say his name because it was notable, but I probably shouldn't. But anyway, he was so 5th grade was my first year. That was also his first year as the headmaster of our school. And he was really young. Him and his wife were really young. They had like 10 kids at this time. Their oldest being in 5th grade, like in my class. So that means they had like a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 4, all the way down. And then I believe she was either pregnant with her 10th or pregnant with her 11th. I want to say 11th. And she kind of just like every year was having another baby. But I mean, she looked great. Anyway, their son was in my class, and it was his first year too. I don't know where they came from. Like, I don't know if they moved from another city or what the case, but let's call his son Jacob. Jacob was very, like, socially awkward is an understatement. He was like, I don't know, very like timid and just he just seemed afraid, but he had friends in the class. I thought he was my friend. Like, this school was so small, like I considered everyone in our class my friend. But I've always been very social and like very outgoing. I found like in a lot of situations that I'm the person like subconsciously trying to force someone who might be like more shy or more introverted out of their shell. Like, I don't know, I just like to make friends and I like to socialize. So I don't know if I maybe did that to him and didn't realize it and it freaked him out or intimidated him. But what I do know is that Jacob started an I Hate Sabrina club. Like, literally, I Hate Sabrina club. And I think there was like one other person in this club. I don't know for sure. I don't remember. I don't know what that meant that they had that club. Like, I don't know what went on. But yeah, so the way that I don't even remember how I found out, but I do remember that I was in trouble one time. Got in trouble all the time at that school. But I was in trouble one time and I was in the office talking to our headmaster and I told him, well, Jacob has an I Hate Sabrina club, and he of course didn't believe me. He's like, no, I don't think he would do that. I didn't raise him to hate. But he was like, I don't know, Jacob wasn't trying to hide it from me, that's for sure. But so I mentioned I was always in trouble at this school. They had this like really crazy like write-up system. So they had like cards you would get if you got in trouble, and they're like color coded. So if you get a blue card, that's a dress code violation. If you get a yellow card, that's like a write-up. Or if you get a red card, it's like an automatic detention. So it was like 5 blue cards equal to detention, 3 yellow cards equal to detention, or a red card was like straight to detention. But detention at this school took place only on Saturdays, and it was from like 9 to 12 or something like that. And you had to show up with $30 in your hand. So like literally on your day off, you go to school 9 in the morning, turn in $30, sign your name, and sit there for a few hours for detention. So that was pretty crazy. This school was like really big on saints. Like, I guess that's a pretty common thing in Catholic churches, but they were like really big on it. Like, we talked about a saint every day in Mass, a different one, and on All Saints Day, which is November 1st, the day after Halloween, everybody in the entire school was expected to choose a saint, dress up as the saint, and then come to school, and the entire school would get together in sorry y'all, my husband and dog are over there making all kinds of noise. So everybody would get together in the hall. The hall was like our auditorium, so we would all get together and one by one get on stage, go up to the podium, like talk about your saint, and you're dressed up like a saint. I'm talking like olden day, like saint clothes. Like, I don't know, it was so embarrassing. I went to the school for 3 years and I purposely skipped that day. Like, there's no way I'm going to school dressed up like a saint from the olden days, like in front of all these boys, like, no. So I skipped that day, like in 5th grade. I just told my mom, like, no, I can't go. So I didn't go in 5th grade. I went 1 year, and that year I dressed up like St. Mary Magdalene, and it was humiliating, but I think that was in 6th grade that happened. And then I skipped it again in 7th grade, I'm pretty sure, yeah. So in 6th grade, things got even crazier. My school was actually on the news because they would have, so like the teachers would have like staff meetings while we were in lunch or PE or something like that, like where none of us were in the building. And we were on the news because, and I don't remember how, like, who caught them or what, but somebody saw, I think it was a student, saw like wine and cups or something like that in the trash can. Like, we went to lunch and then we came back, and in our classroom trash can we had like remnants of alcohol. Like, the teachers were literally drinking during staff meetings while we're at lunch, and then we come back and they're like teaching us. Like, in what world is that okay? But yeah, so we were like on the news for that. And then, this is so inappropriate, but there was this, so when my class started 6th grade, the school implemented Latin. Like, we all had to take Latin class, the middle schoolers, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Our Latin teacher was notorious for having erections during class. Yep. So our desks were like in columns and rows, you know, like with each spaced apart though, so like they weren't connected. So he could walk in between any and all of the desks, and he did, like, that's what he did during class. He'd walk by and like scoot sideways, and he'd have these boners while we're in class. Everybody knew it. I mean, I don't know if he was just well endowed and it looked like an erection, but he was known for having boners during class and walking with his erection in our face. And not just the girls, everybody in the class. Like, it was crazy. And, you know, we're immature middle schoolers. We were like looking for it after a while, like, oh my god, ew, he's got a boner, oh my god. But yeah, you could expect it. You could expect to go to Latin class and find this teacher with an erection. So looking back, that's mortifying. Like, if my daughter experienced anything like that, I would freak out. I don't know what I would do. Like, how do you handle that as a parent? I don't know. But when I was in 6th grade, my mom, they asked for like volunteers for different things. One of those things was after school care. So and that was because a lot of kids went to after school care and they wanted to split it up between like the younger kids and the older kids. So once they decided to split it up, they needed an extra volunteer, and that's where my mom came in. So and you know what, she would also, I think, sub for the pre-K class. So she was at the school like a good amount during this time, and she would come like in business, professional, business casual. I wouldn't even say business casual, like just straight up like professional clothes. Like, she would wear whatever, like what you would wear to in a professional setting. Well, she would sometimes wear skirts, and I am pretty sure that the skirt, so I can remember the skirts my mom wore, and I'm like in my life, but I don't specifically remember the ones she wore to like volunteer at my school, but I know skirts she wore like to work and other things like that. So I'm pretty sure they were like long, like maybe to the ankle, but maybe not. I know for a fact none of her skirts were above the knee. Like, they were below the knee. Whether they were to the ankle or not, they were below the knee. And also, she would get her nails done, and a lot of times had them painted red. Well, they got after my mom and asked her not to wear skirts to like to the school, and that red nail polish was inappropriate. So, a little crazy. When I was in 7th grade, we got this new coach. Actually, let me tell you about the old coach. The old coach, he had a reputation for being like creepy too with young girls. And I do remember seeing him. It's just so hard to say, but I remember like one little girl coming to him saying she was like hurt, and she like lifted her shirt. She was little, like just a little girl, and she like lifted her shirt and had like a red mark here, and I just remember seeing him rub it, and I remember, like, I don't know, I just remember that it was like uncomfortable. Not that he pushed it further than that, or like, I just remember thinking, maybe it's because I grew up without a dad, but I remember thinking like, that's kind of weird. However, when I saw that, I already knew about his reputation to be creepy, so maybe I was just like looking for it. I don't know. But like I said, that's like really hard to say. But yeah, so we had just like this school full of creepy men. I don't know. So when I was in 7th grade, we got a new coach, and it was a woman, and she wasn't just like the girls' coach, she was everyone's coach, and she was a total hard ass. She was like ex-military, super fit, really serious, like not nice. Her daughter was in my class. She also wasn't very nice, but she might have just like not been nice to me. I don't know. I feel like the less social students there like didn't like me or something. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so this coach was like super intense. Like, she wouldn't let the girls do girl push-ups, which I like look back and I appreciate that. Like, I like that she was kind of pushing us, but and like I could do like real push-ups back then, and this was in 7th grade, you know, like I'm in the middle of puberty and stuff. Like, girls I don't know. I could have very easily just been like, no, like all of us could have, but no, she forced us. She made us like really work. But one day we were like running laps around the church, and I hated running. I always have, because I've had asthma since I was like a little kid, since I was 5. So I've always hated running because it, no matter what, always triggers my asthma. Well, this one day it was hot, and like I felt like I was like needing my inhaler. And granted, like pretty much every day during PE I went to get my inhaler because, like I said, every time I ran my asthma was triggered. But of course, from her perspective, she thinks I'm just like milking it. But I asked to use my inhaler, and for whatever reason she like didn't let me. Like she was like making me finish my laps or something. So I think what wound up happening was like part of the way through I just left and I just went to the nurse to get my inhaler, which we didn't have a nurse. Our school didn't have a nurse. We just had like the office. I went to the office and used my inhaler, but it didn't work. Like it wasn't working, and I kept like, I don't know, I couldn't catch my breath. And then I started to like lose oxygen, I guess, because my hands started like, I don't know, they were like stuck like this. Like I couldn't quite open them. It was like I just didn't have circulation. They got this like cot out for me, and I was laying there, and I think I started crying because I'm freaking out, like, oh my god, what's happening to me? And by this time we had a new headmaster who loved me, and I loved him. He was such a great teacher. But he was like holding my hand, and I'm freaking out, and they wound up having to call an ambulance, and I had to go by ambulance to the hospital, and they like gave me oxygen. Honestly, I don't have a lot of, like, I don't really remember what happened once I got to the hospital, but I do remember being in the ambulance and having to use the oxygen, and they were like, oh, she's just hyperventilating. I'm like, hyperventilating? I can't breathe. What are you talking about? Like, this isn't fake. But anyway, yeah, so she like put me in the damn hospital because she wouldn't let me get my inhaler, which, by the way, that's not the first or last time I've been hospitalized for my asthma, so it was pretty serious. That same year, I told y'all about detention, how it was like you had to pay and all that. Well, that year, 7th grade, they implemented what was called mandatory study. So, you know, we had like homework assignments for each class and every day. And if you didn't get your assignment done, so you come to school the next day, you say you've missed one assignment, that teacher was supposed to sign you up for mandatory study, which meant you had to stay like an hour or two after school. You had to, mandatory. And you had to pay, I want to say it was $30, but you had to also pay that after school. So it was just like so crazy. Like literally you could have all your assignments done but one, and then you have to stay after school that day. Also that same year, my homeroom teacher was the biology teacher, and I don't know what happened, but he had this like skull from like a skeleton, and he got super mad at the class and like threw it at the ground, and this skull like shattered, and like little pieces went flying and hit students. Like my best friend from private school, her name is Ara. She was sitting like right at the front, and a piece like flew up and hit her in the leg. And it's not funny because, you know, like, I don't know, most kids haven't seen anything like that. Like, that's kind of violent, you know, and most kids have never seen anything like that in their home life, and then they go to school and someone's throwing things, and like they're being like, Arrow got hit by a piece and she screamed. I didn't quite freak out like that, but I was like in the back of the class. I was just like, oh, like, he's mad. But yeah, she was like crying, and I don't think she was the only one. I think other people were really upset by that too. But it was just like really crazy at this school. Like, I don't know what was in the water there, but I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the teachers were not certified teachers. Like, and I read a little bit about this, and it made by that one guy who like blogs about the school. It makes sense. Like, everybody who worked there was like a really high turnover, and like I told you, like we already had a new principal who had just started when I was in 5th grade, and it's like the middle of 6th grade, I think he stopped. Like, I don't know, but I think like everyone who worked there, like they all knew each other, or like knew our priest or something, and the priest was like the head guy. But it was the kind of thing where like, don't question him. Like, everybody who worked there was like almost, I don't know, it seemed like they were like blind followers of this guy, the priest, including the deacon. But yeah, none of the teachers were certified, and from what I read, like the archdiocese requires that, or some like governing body over private schools requires that teachers are certified to teach, or if they're not, they must be like in some kind of 3-year certification program. Maybe it's like if you teach for 3 years, you can become certified or something. I don't know. But this school just kind of like ignored that rule altogether. So I think that's why part of the reason we had such weird experiences with these teachers, because they didn't know like classroom etiquette. And then like the teachers were just as socially awkward as like half the students there. It was just really bizarre. Honestly, like I hope I'm painting a good picture for you guys, because it was really weird. So 7th grade was my last year at this school, and then in 8th grade I went to public school. But when I was in public school, my mom was like, you have changed too much, like you're going back to private school. And so long story short, I'm considering going back to my previous private school, because when I was in 7th grade, they opened up to 9th grade, and then 8th grade they opened up to 10th, and they were just like kind of letting those, they were growing with their high schoolers. So I was like, well, maybe I should go back there, like I know people there and whatever. So my mom called the school, which I guess like it went to our priest, like whoever she called, like it went to the priest. So she called from my cell phone and left a message, you know, this is so-and-so, Sabrina's mom. I'm trying to see if we can get her back in. Please call us back, and then left my cell phone number. So this was, like I said, I was in 8th grade when this was going on. And at this time, like ringback tones were big. So like when you'd call someone, instead of hearing the ring, you hear a song. And I guess like both of us, it didn't occur to either of us that I had a ringback tone on my phone. And it was like the worst thing you can imagine. But he wound up calling back, and my ringback tone was I Like Big Butts by Sir Mix-a-Lot. So he left a message. We missed the call. He left a message, and he was so offended. He was like, I can't believe you, like, I think he may have thought it was a prank or something. Like, he was like, that's disgusting, and you're not welcome at this school, and that kind of behavior, it's not tolerated, and blah blah blah. So he was like, pissed. My mom had to do major damage control. I don't know what she said to get us out of that one, but she got us out of that one, and I got back into the school. But when I went to like interview or something, or like talk to them, some really weird things came up. Like they asked me, this is like 8th grade going into 9th grade, they asked me if I was still a virgin, and said that if I wasn't a virgin, I couldn't go to that school. Like, I don't even need to get into why that's crazy. Like, that's just crazy. What was that? I don't know. That's just crazy. And then they also, like, asked me about my friend Ara, and they like alluded to the fact that I needed to cut ties with her, like if I was like, they did want me to be her friend if I was gonna go back, and she wasn't going there anymore either. We both left for 8th grade, so that's just like really weird. And then eventually I wound up getting kicked out, so I didn't last very long in that school for high school. And that is actually a different story that I would like to tell y'all. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear that story of how I got kicked out of this private school. But yeah, those are just like some weird experiences I had going to my cult-like school. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Any feedback is appreciated. I hope you guys enjoyed this story, and if you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.